Welcome back into the GSMC Sports Podcast, as we are now going to be moving on from one of the weirder games of the weekend, and that was the Chicago Bears facing off against the Tennessee Titans, and it took a little bit of a miraculous comeback for the Bears to pull off this win. Now, the Titans had a 17-0 lead in the second quarter. By no means is that insurmountable, but it feels insurmountable if you were to tell me beforehand that their offense would not score any touchdowns. That feels borderline impossible, but the Bears were able to somehow climb their way back into this game without ever really finding a groove offensively, thanks to a blocked punt and returning that for a touchdown and a pick six to end up winning the game 24-17. And in this game, Caleb Williams, who is expected to be the savior of the Chicago Bears, was most certainly not that in this game. 14 of 29, 93 yards, 0 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. And the stats are very accurate as to how it actually looked. Caleb Williams, he was very inaccurate in this game. Some of the decision making with him as well, taking some bad sacks, which was always sort of a bit of a tendency with him at USC. It's also similarly a tendency of what Justin Fields was like when he was in Chicago. So a little bit of flashbacks there. Definitely a similarity between the two players. But Caleb, again, none of it was very clean with him whatsoever. Now, he did have a pass that should have gone for a touchdown that was dropped by Keenan Allen. So you can make that argument that he should have had a touchdown. But either way, Caleb already sort of owed Keenan Allen a mulligan anyways, because Caleb missed Keenan on a deep shot earlier in the game. So I suppose it evens out for the two of them, but not something that you really want to feel great about if you are a Bears fan, the fact that they did look so disjointed. But that being said, I did come away from this game with a little bit more of a positive attitude towards the Chicago Bears. Now, again, that being said, you're going to need to get more production out of Caleb Williams, because against basically any team other than the Tennessee Titans, if you're not going to win that game, or maybe the Giants, who also didn't score a touchdown, and we're going to get into their situation later in the show here, but that's not a recipe for success. Of course, they know that. But that being said, I mean, the whole idea about Caleb Williams is going to come in and be the face of the franchise like the Bears have never had before, never had a 4,000-yard passer in the history of their existence. The only team in the NFL to not have a quarterback pass for 4,000 yards in a season. So, again, all this pressure on Caleb Williams to become the hero for them. And the defense, I feel like, is going to come out of this game and say, wait a second, who said we need saving in the first place? This is a group that was really turning themselves around from, I'd say, the trade deadline on last season, where I know this game is against the Titans, but again, it goes beyond just week 1 of 2024. After acquiring Montez Sweat at the trade deadline last year, they have played in 10 games since then, and they are allowing just 17.8 points per game, and that would be one of the best marks in the NFL if you are sort of taking that for a full season sample size. Now, it's not like they've played a number of excellent offenses along the way there, and that they've been sticking it to, but one of those games against the Detroit Lions, pretty good, the number one, something like that, offense from last season. So it's not like they had a ton of cupcakes either. Also played the Packers in week 18, so there are some good wins in there, but 17.8 would rank in the top 4 if you are looking at last season's points per game allowed. So I think that Matt Eberflus, who has this backbone of being a very good defensive coach, I think he knows what he's doing, and I think that they are going to continue to get better because they have all of these young pieces on defense that I think can be really special for them. Tyreek Stevenson, even though that pick six was a little bit gift-wrapped by one of the worst decisions from a quarterback that I've seen in recent years by Will Levis under pressure just trying to flip it out like that to the sideline. It was a disastrous play 100%, but Tyreek Stevenson has been an up-and-coming player, now entering his second season. I'm a fan of a lot of their secondary players. I'm a big fan of Kyler Gordon and Jaquan Brisker. It's a hard-hitting defense that is, a little bit, at this point now with Hard Knocks and everything, a lot more people are on board. But last year, I would say, was a little bit of a nobody believes in us type of team. And going into last season as well, I was not a believer in that defense. But I was just really impressed by the internal development that the Chicago Bears have had, especially on that defensive side of the ball. And now, all of that being said, they ended up winning this game by getting nothing out of Caleb Williams. And again, like I mentioned, that can't be the recipe for success for good, but the idea in that locker room is that Caleb is so much better than what he just gave the Bears in this game. And that it maybe will take some time, a lot of moving pieces on that offense, like I mentioned, not just Caleb coming into the organization for the first time, but Keenan Allen as well. You have Rome Odunze, who did suffer an MCL sprain and is expected to be out for a few weeks, so that is definitely a tough blow to that Bears offense, but ultimately, I have confidence that they're going to be able to take steps forward from here. I am a believer in Caleb Williams, where I know that a lot of NFL fans are sort of out on him. I think it's more so about his personality than his actual talent. Now, again, the decision-making, some of the sacks that he took in this game were a little bit reminiscent of some of the issues for him when he was at USC. Caleb Williams is somebody that does have this superstar potential, and at USC, especially considering the fact that he was playing for a team that didn't have much of a defensive presence in either of those last two seasons, that he felt like he had to overcompensate a little bit and make star plays happen. This is the NFL. There is so much more talent surrounding you at this point on both sides of the ball. No need to run around and try and get yourself out of jams like that. Just make the right play. Don't make the stupid plays. This is a Bears team that I think overall on paper is good enough to be able to win even without superstar play from a quarterback. And I think it's just going to take maybe a little bit of time for Caleb Williams to sort of get that through his head, that for the first time in years, he's playing on a team that doesn't need him to be Superman. He just needs to be a reliable, good option. And with the talent that he has as a player, I expect him to reach higher heights. It's just not what they need from him from day one. Yes, this is a Bears team that has hopes for the first time really in a while. I know they had a little bit of excitement headed into 2023. I was never really on board with that, but I do think that now, yeah, sure, the Bears are sort of building up some momentum here, but it's not all on the shoulders of Caleb Williams. And you're going to have people, putting you down and expecting you to be excellent from day one, in large part because of how the media has covered him, throughout these past couple years. But it's natural player development here. Nobody walks into the NFL the best player in the league. And I'm not saying that Caleb Williams is going to be the best player in the league because, frankly, Patrick Mahomes exists. But Caleb has a chance to etch himself with the elites in the league. But, again, there's no need to sort of rush the process there because the Bears are further along than a lot of people sort of anticipated coming into this point. And I think he's going to be just okay. This was, I would imagine, just as bad as the Bears offense is going to look all season frankly, because it's hard to get much worse than what they had. I will say this, the offensive line I was disappointed in, because I've been somebody that saying, oh, well, actually, if you look at the Bears offensive line, they've been making a lot of moves in these past couple years to try and help shore up the group a little bit more. They've heard for years now about their inability to protect Justin Fields, that's where they're investing money and draft capital into. And ultimately, it was pretty lackluster performance as a whole from that Chicago offensive line that I'm definitely going to want to see more from them as well. Got very little push on the ground game. DeAndre Swift is a player that I think is good in moments. I do feel like his name carries a little bit more weight than the actual talent that he is. But even with that being the case, I think they're a pretty deep running back room anyways. Khalil Herbert, I think, is a very nice second option, a little bit more of a power back. Roschon Johnson, according to ESPN, is listed as fourth on the depth chart. But there were moments last year when, maybe it was 2 years ago, when it was Herbert and Montgomery that they were dealing with some injuries, that I did think that Roschon showed some really good things for them. So all of this to be said, the Bears have a lot of areas that they can improve on now moving forward here. That the way that they played this past week is not going to be enough for them to consistently win football games. But that being said, I have belief in the infrastructure. I feel like they are going to be all right coming out of this. But let me know what your takeaways are in the comments section. But we are now going to be moving on to, after talking Caleb Williams, the number 1 overall pick out of 2024, I want to switch gears here to the 2023 first overall pick in Bryce Young, who continues to struggle early on in his NFL career. And I have some thoughts on whether or not the clock and the time is running out already on Bryce Young, just 17 or so games into his NFL career. So we will be diving into that. But first, we are going to be taking a quick break. Do not go anywhere. We will be right back.